Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I know this may not be the most exciting way to start, but I have been asked by the West Road Concert Hall to read the fire instructions for conferences, so I will start with them. As you will have already discovered, there are two main entry and exit doors in this auditorium, one at the top on my left and one at the bottom on my left. These are the only two that lead into the foyer and other breakout rooms. If there is a fire, however, there are 4 emergency fire exits in this auditorium. Whenever you take your seat, please take the time to notice where your nearest fire exit is. One at the top on my left, one at the top on my right, one at the bottom on my left, and one at the bottom on my right. If there is a fire, there is an automated voice system which will tell you to evacuate the building immediately. Please congregate well away from the building on the pavement on West Road, but without blocking the emergency service routes. Thank you very much. Yes, it is indeed an honor to welcome you, each and every one, to the opening of the 10th Gulf Research Meeting. Many developments have taken place in the Gulf region since the first Gulf Research Meeting in 2010, and many of these developments have been analyzed, discussed, debated, as well as documented through the work of the Gulf Research Meetings. The 60 volumes of edited research papers that have been published or are in the process of being published based on the work of the Gulf Research Meetings represent a significant contribution to knowledge about the Gulf region. Knowledge for all is the ultimate goal of the Gulf Research Center, and on behalf of everyone at the Gulf Research Center, I thank you for being here to take part in this very creative process. Much more is possible when we come together and communicate rather than separating and not communicating. And this knowledge is a gift we can give to the entire world. We now have for you a short video that summarizes these first 10 Gulf Research Meetings. So I would ask our audiovisual friends to play this video now.
The Gulf Research Meeting, or GRM, was established by the Gulf Research Center in order to foster greater understanding of the Gulf region and the challenges it faces, as well as to strengthen links between Gulf scholars from different regions. The first GRM took place in July 2010. Since then, it has taken place annually, and GRM 2019 marks a decade of Gulf Research Meetings at the University of Cambridge. Led by the commitment of Dr. Abdulaziz Saqr, the founder and chairman of GRC, the GRM is unparalleled in both its scope and value for scholarly and policy-oriented research about the critical Gulf region. Through parallel workshops dedicated to specific topics, the Gulf Research Meetings provide insightful and policy-relevant information about the Gulf region, with the goal of generating solutions to many of the region's pressing challenges and promoting mutual understanding between the Gulf countries and the rest of the world. GRM brings together researchers and institutions from across the world, creating opportunities for networking and cooperation. Particular importance is placed on encouraging young scholars, in particular from the GCC countries, to engage in research collaboration. In this way, providing a path into the future generation and enhancing the role it will play in shaping the region's development. During its first 9 years, the GRM has organized 113 workshops, directed by a total of 362 workshop co-directors. These workshops have brought together 2,975 participants from across the globe who represent 60 nationalities. About 40% of the participants have come from the Gulf region. A total of 1,531 participants have presented research papers which have been debated during more than 1,700 hours of discussion. Over the years, the Gulf Research Meetings have been generously supported by 33 institutions. The Gulf Research Center Cambridge extends its sincere thanks and gratitude to all the donor organizations. Without their generous support and enthusiasm, the Gulf Research Meetings would not have been possible. To date, more than 50 edited volumes of research papers have been published, ensuring that together with the GRM paper series, the outreach extends for beyond the meetings themselves. The ultimate objective of the Gulf Research Meetings is the long-term stability and prosperity for the Gulf region. At a time when a better understanding of the Gulf region is more important than ever, the Gulf Research Meetings provide a much-needed platform.
I would now like to welcome to the stage Dr. Abdulaziz Sagir, who is the chairman of the Gulf Research Center. Please.
I must say welcome to everybody. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome you all. I can't see you because the spotlight is very high here, but what a great honor for me to welcome you in the 10th GRM meeting. Today, when we had our Board of Trustee meeting, I recalled the first time when I came here to Cambridge and met at the King's College with Sir Richard Dearlove, who was our Board of Trustee member, and with Stewart Lane and Professor Jeffrey, who's here with us today also. And I came with Professor Jack Mulewchani, our former director of the GRC in Geneva, and with Abdullah Ba'aboud. So we've met together, and we have thought about establishing something at the University of Cambridge here. We've created the foundation, and we start our first, and we said we would like to have a very scientific and academic, solid annual meeting that brings people together from different parts of the world, those whom they are interested in the research components for the region. And we've kept our subject primarily focused in social science, not in applied science, because we're not in the business of applied sciences. But still, I'm very pleased today, and I think the quick video that you have seen shows how many workshops, how many participants they came, and all the effort has been done during all this number of years. I need to thank everybody, and I will start with you, those from the paper presenter, the one that makes, you are the feedstock for this sort of important academic conference and meeting, because without you presenting your paper, without you discussing, debating on the subject, and networking with your friends and colleagues from different parts of the world, addressing various issues from various angles. We have never interfered in what paper, who presented, what nationality, what gender. I'm glad to see gender equality is well represented in our meeting today. In fact, I feel the female side are more than the male, which is a plus point. And definitely, I would like to thank all my colleagues at the Gulf Research Center. If I can count them all, will be great, but at the same time, I don't want to bother you by mentioning all the names, but definitely I like to thank them all, Dr. Mustafa Al-Ani, Dr. Christian Koch, Dr. Jonas Fakinakis, and Dr. Oscar Zemilis, Sania, Jaweed, Aline, Hanoud, all of our colleagues that really makes this event possible and worked out. And a very special thanks goes to the University of Cambridge. And I will start with Professor Sulaiman. He was in the first meeting that took place in Cambridge when we came 11 years ago here. And he was a great supporter through the Islamic Center they have here. And he's still a great supporter to the foundation and to all the effort that we do. It's a non-for-profit organization, so we are not here to make money or to sell a product or to encourage people to do anything in the commercial side. So we've kept it as a non-for-profit NGO organization that provide scholarly research, and we will continue. And I think today, the good thing, I raised the question to my colleague in the Board of Trustees, and I say, how about the next 10 years? What are we going to do? And I think I was so happy to see the commitment from all the Board of Trustees to see that they are there, they want to be committed, and they would like to continue support and encourage and provide a platform for a serious research work to be done. A very special thank also goes to His Excellency Dr. Abdul Latif Al-Zayani, who believed me when I met him the first day when he was appointed as a Secretary General to the GCC. We met in Bahrain, and he can see that my enthusiasm and my push and my, driven inside me, saying, look, I want you to come please to this conference. You will not regret it. You are the most important one for us. We want you to give us a brief of the year, what have happened in the Gulf country. And he was so kind to accept the invitation, and he never failed me down. So, very special thanks to him and to all his. Also, my thanks goes to all my colleagues, the colleagues from the Research Center. And here today we have Sheikh Abdullah Al-Khalifa from Dirasat in Bahrain, that he was also a great supporter for the Gulf Research Center. Our friend from Kuwait, UAE, Qatar, Oman, all the GCC countries, they were a big supporter. And the beauty about it, when you go through a lot of the history of the workshop, we've almost covered a lot of topic, but we still have a lot of topics still that we have not covered. So I'm sure for the next 10 years also we will be busy with many subjects. This year, the Iraqi President Barham Saleh was happy to see that we are discussing Kurdistan and the Gulf, which is a great subject that people before never talked about it. But also, we did in the previous year, we look at Africa and the Gulf, we look at the US and the Gulf, we did look at the Latin America and the Gulf, we looked at the European and the Gulf. So we're very, yesterday the Saudi Foreign Minister, I sent him a message, I say, just to let you know that 60% of our workshop deals with IR issue, with international relation issue, which is in the hard subject of the foreign ministry in the region. Again, I would like to thank our donors. I would like to thank our colleagues here. I would like to thank everybody for making this GRM possible, and I look forward for more future participation. This year we have limited to 375 participant paper presenter and a 14 workshop. We could have gone for more, but the problem, we have a limited space at Cambridge University that we can't squeeze people in more space, and then when we take you out for lunch or dinner, there's only one place that can take maximum to that number. So this is why we have kept it on the range of maximum 400. And that's the average that we would like to keep, but it's a quality people and a quality researcher. I've invited my youngest nephew today here, and the reason why, because I want to tell him in 2045, he will be the director of GRC, but I wanted to train him from now. Because I think by 2045, I'm going to move to another job myself. So I want to make sure from today that he comes at the age of 15 and see what we are doing and build up the enthusiasm on him and make sure that we give him an early recruitment for that one. Yet I have my both sons, Ahmed and Mohammed, here, to help and to participate with all of you. The reason why I'm saying like this, because I forget my speech, by the way. So I decided to speak my mind. And I'm not going to talk about the last 10 years, what have happened in the region, about political changes, security issues, economic development, energy crisis. I think I'm going to leave that to all my colleagues, whom they will share it with you at this session. But many thanks again for the University of Cambridge. Welcome to the most beautiful city that I like and I love in this part of the country here. We have had all the good support that we needed from the university, and we are very thankful to them. Today we have the Vice Pro Councillor here with us, who will also speak to you very soon, and he's very much into the research, and I'm sure he will encourage you to spend half of your life in research, because then you become more confused not to be able to answer the other parties, the questions that you have in mind. But welcome and thank you for coming, and look forward for a wonderful time for you in Cambridge, and all the best.
I am now pleased to invite to the stage Professor David Cardwell. He is the Pro Vice Chancellor for Strategy and Planning at the University of Cambridge. Please.
So thank you, Oscar, for the introduction. So Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, it gives me enormous pleasure to welcome you today to GRC's 10th Annual Gulf Research Meeting. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Dr. Abdulaziz Saga, Chair and Founder of the GRC, more generally, for his contribution to this important initiative. Under his leadership, the GRC has developed into one of the leading international conferences on the study of the Gulf region, as most of you are aware, showcasing the work of scholars from the Gulf and elsewhere, bringing together many voices and perspectives in one location. It really is a significant achievement. I personally have a very active interest in research in the Gulf region. I've actually made 4 visits there this year already. So it gives me particular pleasure to make this welcoming address. As the Gulf states diversify their economies, it's important to discuss and work through the challenges and opportunities posed by social changes these bring. From global warming and climate change, we're very familiar with those, to the rapidly evolving ethics of AI being of increasing and global focus. And just 3 months ago, I gave a presentation in Dubai on exactly that subject. The program for the conference promises real engagement. I spent some time reading through it with a wide range of extremely important issues. These really are potentially world-defining. Individual workshops, as those of you who've done the same as I have, know that they focus on really important issues like maintaining peace, the resolution of conflict, the use of AI, youth culture and sustainability, all of which impacts significantly on regional behaviour, including the barriers that need to be overcome and the opportunities they present. And I think quite often it really is easier to focus on the barriers, and we need to remember that ultimately opportunities do win out. So these are the areas that align closely with research interests at the University of Cambridge, and we're very proud to be associated with this activity. And we have a number of very acclaimed academics that are actively involved in the region. Academics such as Professor Sir Richard Friend, Professor Lynn Gladden, and Professor Patrick Maxwell, over a very broad raft of scientific interest. And then also we're moving more into the liberal arts, and that really bodes quite well for this initiative. More recently, and specifically, the Cambridge Department of the History of Art is engaging closely with the Gulf on Islamic art, which is a welcome and much needed cultural addition to the university. And I think we're very close to making a major agreement in that area. And the university has, of course, been the beneficiary of considerable generosity from the Gulf region. So just to name a few, the Kuwait Foundation for the Advancement of Sciences, which established the Kuwait Mathematics Program now over a decade ago, so that predates this meeting. His Majesty Sultan Qaboos of Oman, who established a professorship of modern Arabic and a professorship of Abrahamic faiths. And of course, we are extremely privileged to host the HRH Prince Al Walid Center of Islamic Studies, which promotes the understanding of the role of Islam and Muslims in a wider society in this global age. As many of you know, one of our main strengths here at Cambridge is that the university is famously and truly a bottom-up, research-driven organisation. In this, individual researchers are free to pursue their own lines of inquiry and collaborations, where we promote freedom of academic speech and bring together many excellent critical minds over the next few days here, which promises to spark new questions and new collaborations. So therefore, I'm personally delighted that colleagues at this university are working in partnership to address global challenges impacting on the Gulf region and elsewhere. So I sincerely hope you have a very productive workshop, and I'm sure you'll find Cambridge a very welcoming and vibrant community of very deep thinkers. I wish you a very successful conference. Thank you.
I am now pleased to invite to the stage and Dr. Abdullah Al-Khalifa, who is the chairman of the Bahrain Center for Strategic, International, and Energy Studies, also known as Darasat. Please.
Your Excellency, Dr. Abdul Latif Al-Zayani, Dr. Abdulaziz Sagar, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, very good afternoon. I spoke at this podium 6 years ago, and it's good to be back. I congratulate the GRC for the 10th anniversary of the GRM, and I thank Dr. Abdulaziz for this invitation. I believe we all share the deep appreciation for the indispensable role of the Gulf Research Center and its leadership in producing high-quality research that furthers our strategic understanding of the developments of the Arab and Gulf region. Here today, whilst we may represent many cultures, it is very important that we always remember that we are part of a one global society with the same human aspirations, with the same goals, the goals of furthering the well-being of our peoples, the goals of protecting our valued human principles. We come together to defend our one shared society from the scourge of extremism, terrorism, racism, and hate. Following in this steed, I believe the title, Investing in Knowledge and Thought, effectively contributes towards achieving the positive change we all desire. It has the power to project inspirational visions and new dynamic that supports peace, freedom, and development, whilst simultaneously fighting extremism and terrorism in all of its forms. Of the world's regions, it is of little doubt that the Middle East is in great need of investment in knowledge and thought. We must isolate, contain, and deter theocratic ideologies with a war of education and knowledge, with inspirational thoughts that serves the greater good and the development of our people. For the past few years, the Middle East has been known as the land of crises. This is due to an imbalance in the regional system after differences won over coexistence. Chaos triumphed over stability, coupled with a stark increase in failed states and those on the verge of collapse. Many theories have been put forward to explain and tackle the situation that have permeated the region, such as filling the vacuum or creative extremism. But the fingerprints of one particular theory can be seen throughout, namely that of power politics. This phenomenon is danger to the extreme, for this power is often fueled by sectarian strife, by extremist ideology, and the hatred of the other. In this vein, Iran is a prime example. Gentlemen, if you don't mind. Following the passage of 4 decades, since the revolution, the following can be said with conviction. Iran is not a normal state, and its sectarian agenda is based on expanding their own control over the countries of the region. The Iranian sectarian project is incendiary in nature and is aimed at provoking crisis as well as sponsoring and financing terrorist militias. Iran's interferences in the affairs of regional countries is very widely known. In my own nation of Bahrain, many terrorist cells have been dismantled. Cells that have received foreign training and funding, as well as assistance in smuggling and using explosives. Exhaustive investigations and all of the evidence revealed their loyalty to the Islamic Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, or one of their manifestations in neighboring countries. Interestingly, theocratic regimes and Takfiri terrorism go hand in hand, despite the different names. Their doctrine and their purpose is one: the responsibility to change the world with divine orders. Hence, from their point of view, any act of terrorism committed in this vein is seen as legitimate and justified. The Middle East is currently experiencing a new crisis. The latest escalation in the Arabian Gulf has seen terrorist attacks on civilian oil tankers. The evidence presented clearly shows that Iran is responsible for these attacks. The attacks on oil tankers hark back to the tanker war phase of the Iran-Iraq war in the 1980s, and Iran's targeting of oil tankers then. The crisis between Washington and Tehran carries several scenarios, pendulating between military escalation and a call to the negotiating table. But in my estimation, the sheer cost of war to both sides make the military option extremely unviable. Simultaneously, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict remains a constant source of tension, and due to our wish in Bahrain to be an effective part of the solution, Bahrain hosted recently the Prosperity for Peace workshop in Manama. This was an initiative towards further development, better education, and ultimately a better quality of life for the peoples of the region, and particularly the Palestinians. More so, it has aimed to establish an environment conducive to peace. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, over the past decade, our region has borne witness to violent changes which have only resulted in the collapse of national institutions and the rise of sectarian and ethnic conflicts with a level of savagery hitherto unseen. They have obstructed the ways to development and made the path towards reform far more difficult. And an unfortunate reality is that there is a new generation and in numerous Middle Eastern countries who know only the language of violence or the path to revenge. The beneficiaries of the tragic situation is Iran and leaders of extremism. It can be said with certainty that European countries have not been far removed from the consequences of these results and events. Indeed, this is notably true in relation to the influx of migrants and acts of terrorism committed on European soil. The experiences of the past few years have no doubt been hard and testing. Perhaps this has led most of us realizing that stability, gradual reform, education, and sustainable development are the ways forward. This, coupled with spreading moderate thought, rhetoric, are all essential pillars for democratic development. And the time has come to send a firm, collective message to Iran. Enough interference, enough terrorism, enough nefarious interventions in the affairs of others, and enough threat to international peace and security. The moderate Arab states, at the forefront of which lies the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain, have acted to prevent the spread of conflict and terrorism to new areas. The Islamic Military Counter-Terrorism Coalition and the Arab Coalition to Support Legitimacy in Yemen have been established to combat Iran's incendiary stalking conflict. We also have and seek to ensure that the Houthi militias do not control Bab el-Mandeb or threaten international navigation and the freedom of the seas. Simultaneously, we seek to render assistance to countries affected negatively by Iran's actions. The aforementioned Arab countries have a successful counterterrorism architecture, one that integrates security with economic growth, human development, and religious moderation. The Kingdom of Bahrain, under the leadership of His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, presents a model of self-determination that champions unity over diversity. In order to build the foundation of democratic practice and activate public participation. All the whilst, Bahrain maintains the separation of powers in line with the principles of justice, sustainability, and competitiveness that make up the pillars of Bahrain's Economic Vision 2030 that was launched 11 years ago. This is done with the participation of groups from all walks of life, including the youth and women, all the while furthering the principles of tolerance and citizenship. Dear friends, our collective efforts are the only way forward. Only through this can we address the challenges that we face. Only through this can we ensure that every last one of us, especially our youth, have hope and access to ample opportunities. We must also better manage our differences through dialogue, focusing on human beings, for human beings are any nation's true wealth. We must protect our people's right to live in a secure and a prosperous environment with a high quality of life and advanced government services. Our battles are part of a much wider, comprehensive war against extremism. To win it, we must create environments that are conducive to successful reform and sustainable development. From this podium, I invite you all to invest in this international forum as a focal point to widen and deepen human partnerships. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Before we continue, I kindly request those of you who have not yet done so to please put your mobiles on silent. Thank you. Now I am honored to invite to the stage Dr. Abdul Latif Al-Zayani, who is the Secretary General of the Gulf Cooperation Council. Please.
Sheikh Abdullah, thank you for your remarks. It's hard to come after you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Your Excellency, Dr. Abdul Aziz bin Saqr, the Chairman, Your Excellency Sheikh Abdullah, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, once again, I must thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the invitation to speak at this prestigious gathering, to which I have returned almost every year since 2011. Of course, being a returning speaker means attempting each year to have something fresh and insightful to say. So, as I was carrying out my annual pre-speech struggle for words, I was struck by a realization. As ever, the GRC has invited such a wide range of participants that I am addressing, an audience whose combined knowledge of global and regional affairs far exceeds me and my own. And so, I thought that instead of trying to deliver answers, I should humbly ask questions in order to stimulate discussion and to learn from the combined expertise and experience gathered here today. Accordingly, I have crafted the title of my talk as a question. When the Middle East dust settles, what then? In other words, when the dust settles from the interplay between external and internal layers of influence on the region, assuming that one day it will, what would we like to see emerge? Will we be ready for it? For external and some external powers, Europe, for example, stir little dust. Others, such as China, are growing in influence, but able to enjoy evolving and warming relations with most countries, while yet others, such as Russia, stir little dust overtly, but are seen by some as working behind the scenes to cause the curtains to twitch uncomfortably. It is the United States, though, which has the greatest impact on the region. Given our deep and long-standing political, economic, social, and security ties, and the greatest potential both to raise dust, storms, and to quell them, such as the weight of its influence. Ultimately, however, all the major external players seek to influence the region in furtherance of their perceived national interests, and so the dust rises. But today, outside powers recognize that in furthering their interests, lasting settlements are infinitely more desirable than short-term adventures. So these are the outside influences, and I want now to ask my first question. Is there any way for us to influence outside powers so that their interests are aligned for the good of the region. And now we move nearer the core, to the nations of the Middle East, including our own Gulf states. We all have internal and external supporters and detractors, and we all have our allies and opponents. We have individual defense and foreign policies, and in some cases, we differ marginally from each other despite being linked through an alliance. Some support organizations which others oppose. Some have issues with internal violence, while others feel or are being threatened externally. So the overall regional picture is complex, with interlinked relationships, subtle nuances, apparent contradictions, and constantly evolving dynamics. But for the most part, the issues and challenges are clear. Palestine, Iran, Syria, Yemen, Libya, Iraq, Daesh and other terrorist groups, hostile cyber activities, global threats of religious-led extremism and radicalization, and so on. Equally clear are the various initiatives at all levels, most totally independent of each other, to try to solve or at least minimize the different challenges. But if we are to influence outside powers to align their interests with those of the region, surely we need a coherent, joined-up, focused response to the issues we face. Wouldn't it be better to prioritize the challenges and focus greatest effort where it can have most effect? This leads me to my second question. In order of priority, which of the challenges in the Middle East, if resolved, would be most likely to lead to a long-term regional reduction in violence and tension? Here, there are many opinions, but little consensus. Of the many possibilities for priority one issues, I personally believe that our two main challenges are Palestine and Iran, and that the links between them account for much of the current tensions. Indeed, in my view, the failure to reach a just solution to the Palestinian issue feeds the activities of Iran and other actors in spreading terrorism, extremism, and radicalization in the region and beyond. So it is on these two issues that we should coordinate our energy and diplomacy towards a solution. But what if there was an approach which, if treated as a priority, could help address all these issues? Ladies and gentlemen, in the 8 years that I have been in this role, I have realized that the overwhelming focus of academics and thinkers is on the short and medium term, for the very good reason that the long term cannot be properly gauged until today's complexities are solved. But on the other hand, would today's challenges be easier to resolve if there were a long-term vision towards which we could work? Can the long term be prevailed upon to influence the shorter term? Is it easier to settle the Middle East dust when we have decided upon the what then? I put it to you again that momentum in addressing individual challenges is best maintained if there is a long-term vision towards which Each plan is interlocked. The vision I am talking about is ambitious, yet simple. The creation of a sustainable, secure, and prosperous Middle East. Now for my next question. How is a sustainable, secure, and prosperous Middle East best achieved? Those who were here last year will recall that I introduced for the first time the word interdependence and put forward some arguments to back my theme of creating a vision of interdependence. I make no apologies for repeating some of those arguments today, because I am convinced that it is through interdependence that interests can be harmonized, compromises reached, collaboration achieved, and benefits made available for major powers and regional nations alike. Above all, by attempting to answer the long-term what then, we might see answers to the short-term what now. So just as the nations of Europe have come to realize over the past 75 years the value of aligning their national interests more closely for national and regional benefit, might we persuade some states in the MENA region of the value of cooperation over the pursuit of a narrow national interest? Ladies and gentlemen, the key issue for the Middle East is how to encourage movement towards interdependence without the terrible conflicts which drove Europe to the same realization. These are themes which I covered in more detail last year, and I am sure that the Gulf Research Center would be happy to point you towards the transcript should you be interested in revisiting those remarks. And while I won't repeat them in detail, I can summarize by saying that this momentous challenge requires imagination, flexibility, political will, and careful calibration. Its undoubted financial cost has to be balanced against the long-term dividends and the trillions wasted on conflict and misery. Last year, I set out a possible roadmap to the goal, with like-minded nations initially articulating a long-term vision and conceptual plan, then reaching out to others, like ripples spreading in a pond, to join a loose association whose long-term aim is peace and prosperity through interdependence. I reasoned that doubters and adversaries could be drawn in through a goal that was so attractive that not to be part of it would be to demonstrably lose out. Today, I want to touch briefly on the financial aspect, because without adequate financial incentives and support, the vision of interdependence is non-starter. That is why I have been encouraged by the recent moves. And I think the workshop alluded by His Excellency Sheikh Abdullah too, that was conducted in Bahrain, is one of those moves to conceptualize regional financial interdependence, to get more parties to recognize the economic benefits of cooperation over confrontation, and to begin to engage with outside powers on how such interdependence can be encouraged. From here, could we perceive the kernel of a kind of Middle Eastern Marshall Plan, nurturing substantial investment from both the region and beyond to develop and expand both the physical infrastructure and the networks of cooperation and trade that form the bedrock of interdependence. Although such steps can only come to fruition in the context of a comprehensive political settlement along the lines of the widely accepted Arab Peace Initiative, and although economic interdependence cannot be built in a vacuum, requiring at the very least that political issues are resolved in a just and sustainable manner. Maybe, just maybe, this vision of prosperity through interdependence can unlock momentum towards resolving regional political issues. If it can, and I believe it can, then surely it is incumbent on the international community, on all outside powers, to support and advocate both the benefits of such a vision and the just political settlements it will entail. Mr. Chairman, as we look to the future and the long term, I think we can perceive an answer to one of the questions I posed earlier. How do we align the interests of outside powers for the good of the region? And perhaps the answer to my main question, when the dust settles, what then? Well, here is a vision of what comes next. A vision of a peaceful, stable, prosperous, and interdependent Middle East, massively expanding its trade and cooperation both within the region and across the globe to spread prosperity and development. And I believe that the interests of all the major outside powers are aligned in realizing this vision. For regional stability contributes to global stability, just as regional prosperity fuels global growth. And once this alignment of interest is fully recognized, those outside powers can help through investing in a new, optimistic era and through supporting from our small beginnings the institutions, the links, and the trust that will be required. They can do so, too, through being vocal advocates of the benefits that will follow, and by encouraging all concerned to move seriously and in good faith towards this goal, so that the only losers will be those who choose not to participate. But I would ask that you take on board my main point, that we must move away from the temptation of thinking small, of thinking only of the present. I say this, whether you are a world power, a regional neighbor, or a nation that is intimately involved, or indeed the one of think tanks and forums, which shape the global intellectual landscape. Because the more we can think beyond the dust of today and start planning for a brighter future, the more we will give hope to the region's citizens, and the more likely it is to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, today I have outlined one possible vision to answer the question, what then? A vision which I hope is compelling, or at least worthy of further debate and consideration. But perhaps I might close on another question. Having considered the future I have outlined, if not this, then what? Thank you. Thank you, sir. Please take a seat.
Thank you. We will now have a panel session and a question and answer session. And I would like to invite Dr. Christian Koch who is the senior advisor at the Bussola Institute, to moderate this session. And you will invite the others? Yes. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. So I'm very much looking forward to moderating the discussion, and maybe I can ask Sheikh Abdallah, Dr. Alani, Professor Giacomo Luciani, and John Swafianakis to join me here on the stage so that we can get the discussion started.
Sir.
Can you hear me through this? Maybe this works? Okay, excellent, thank you. I just want to introduce maybe our three other speakers joining us. Dr. Mustafa Alani, of course, known to many of you as also as the Director for Defense and Security Studies at the Gulf Research Center. Professor Giacomo Luciani, a professor at the Graduate Institute for Development and International Studies in Geneva, and also running the Masters of International Energy at Sciences Po in Paris. And John Swafianakis, at my far end here, the chief economist for economic issues, then also at the Gulf Research Center. So thank you for joining us, and we're looking forward to a good discussion here. I think we have about 45 minutes to an hour. Now, in my privilege as chair, I get to ask the first questions to everybody. And so Dr. Zayani, this will not just be a question. I'll have to ask you for an answer this time as we proceed. And maybe I can challenge you a little bit, Dr. Al-Zayani, right from the beginning. Because when we're looking at the developments in the region, and thank you very much also for the type of vision you put forward, but of course there are real problems right now on the ground. And I'm wondering very much, where do you see the future of the GCC in terms of its integration, in terms of its unity? From an outside perspective, sometimes we have a lot of questions about where the GCC is headed. We have the current crisis in the region. There's not necessarily the great amount of unity among all GCC member states. We see some conflicting messages at times. For example, we have Qatar participating in the GCC summit meeting at the end of May, but then coming out and saying not necessarily agreeing with some of the statements issued. We still see a lot of activity on the GCC front, but when you're talking about having a long-term vision, or when you mention not to think too small, where is the GCC headed? Will we still have a GCC?
Oh, yes, we will have a GCC. Well, you're done with your question.
Yes.
I think there's multiple questions. So the journey of the GCC started in 1981, and started by the 6 countries signing the charter. And the founding fathers had astute vision. They realized that we need to evolve in our relationship, that we need to build the cooperation gradually, even though there were challenges. Those challenges were security challenges because of the Iraqi war was on. And also there were economical challenges, challenges in really building that cooperation, that organization. It is unprecedented. Even if we want to benchmark the GCC with any other organization, it's unique. So it's not fair to really benchmark it with any other organization. So they have explicitly stated a goal, an objective, and I believe Article 4 of the Charter that we will achieve cooperation, coordination, integration, connectivity between all member states in all fields, leading towards unification. The key word is, I think, leading. That gives you the understanding that we are in an evolutionary process and not jumping. And of course, that journey will face some bumps here and there, some hurdles, many challenges we have faced, and we came out of it stronger. We have achieved a lot. It was a vision of the founding fathers, but now it's a reality that all the peoples of the Gulf, of the GCC, want this organization to continue. They want more integration in all fields, which we have achieved. I can give many examples, but I don't want to bore you with. But just one example, like for example, the intra-trade has jumped from, in the year 2003, from $6 billion to the year 2018 to almost $140 billion. The movement of people went up because of the ease of movement, went up from 4.5 all the way to 27 million in a year. Health is being provided to all GCC citizens, and they are treated as if they are citizens of the country that they want to receive the medical services in, free. Education is being provided to all. So those rights are being provided to the entire populations of the GCC. The common market, the custom union, we have achieved a lot in it. The custom union now is internationally recognized. The common market is a single market. We have one tariff. We have one point of entry to the common market. We were challenged a few years or many years ago when we started that this will be just an organization that will deem to fail. I'm proud of our leaders, our heads of states. I'm proud of the efforts that the ministers are putting, and I'm proud of the citizens and how they are really supporting the organization and the process. Challenges are there. I think you will find the GCC will be more united. It will be stronger. We are going by having agreements in the economic side. The first agreement, which was signed just 3 months after the foundation of the founding of the GCC, it was the economic agreement. And then it evolved into the common market to create the common market. Now we are moving towards an economic union by the year 2025 to 2028 to achieve it. Programs are in place, studies are being conducted, and a very high level commission has been established to oversee and steer the cooperation into achieving an economic union. So we are on the right track. I'm proud of it, and I'm very confident that we will achieve it. There is what you are calling the rift or the issue that we have. It's being dealt by a super, really, person who is the Emir of Kuwait, well known to all, super diplomat. His mediation was welcomed by the heads of states, and we are hoping that it will be resolved within the GCC, and by resolving it within the GCC, it will give a more credibility also to the GCC and more confidence. We thank our friends and allies who are really concerned, and they want to see us continuing on this path of solidarity, of a unified GCC. While some countries and some regions export revolutions and export violence and terror, we in the GCC don't export only oil, we export stability. Thank you, sir.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. It's good to hear that we have a sense of optimism about the way forward.
Great.
Sheikh Abdullah, can I turn to you for a minute? You're, of course, also welcome to sort of consider the same question, but I really want to ask you a little bit more on, you mentioned the Bahrain meeting on the Palestinian economy. And you of course, you and Dr. Zayani both mentioned the failure of having resolved the Palestinian issue being an issue of constant tension still in the region. You spoke about a better quality of life as a result of the conference. Do you see a deal of the century being possible? And is sort of this focus on the quality of life enough to sell the deal in the region, if that's the case? I mean, what needs to happen? Where do you see this going?
The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is the longest standing item at the United Nations agenda. It has been on there for more than 7 decades. There has been lots of conferences, lots of meetings, lots of initiatives. For us, we stand by the Arab Initiative. And the entire world was following the developments in Manama, who hosted the workshop, which was organized by the United States during the time of 25th, 26th of June. Prior to the workshop, there was lots of ambiguity around the workshop. Many have looked at the workshop with a pinch of salt. What is expected from the workshop? Why is Bahrain hosting this workshop? But the main idea was to host a workshop and look at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict with a sustainable economic lens, notwithstanding the importance of the political agreement, but what will the region look like should there be any peace, should there be an agreement, an investment for the prosperity of the region, not only for Palestine, but for the surrounding countries, including Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, and Egypt. So a few days prior to the workshop, the plan was released through the White House website, and there was a brief idea on the plan. I haven't seen anything on the deal of the century. I don't know who got the branding of the deal of the century, but the actual presentation that was presented by Mr. Kushner during the workshop detailed the projects on known territories and known areas of different countries. What are the projects, the estimated budget, and at the end of the second day, it is at the end of the day a workshop. There wasn't any single commitment, but most of the attendees were of high-level dignitaries, ministers of finance, ministers of economy, the heads of the IMF, the head of the World Bank were there. But there seemed to be a commitment by the private sector. Should there be any opportunity to invest in the region for the prosperity of the region, for the economic development and sustainability of the region, the private sector is ready to invest for the betterment of the peoples of the region. And this was a sense of optimism at the end of the second day of the workshop. There were exhaustive discussions over the sessions, but if we ask ourselves, what did we gain out of this workshop? Even though there wasn't any concrete commitments or a concrete plan on the way forward. We have all listened to the United States while they said that in a few months' time, we will reveal the political plan. For us, Bahrain being part of the Arab world, as I mentioned earlier, we are committed to the Arab initiative, the historical rights for the Palestinians for an independent state with east of Jerusalem as their capital. But let us not disregard the economic potential of the region. I absolutely agree with the vision of Dr. Abdel Latif Al-Zayani. There's an enormous amount of potential in the region. The human resources are there, the natural resources are there, the capital is there. It's just about proper management. And this was just an opportunity for the entire world to have a look on how the region can look should there be a peace in the region.
Okay, thank you for that. I think the emphasis on economics is a good transition to our two speakers on my far here. And maybe I can bring Giacomo into the discussion a little bit to focus on energy really is still the backbone in the Gulf region. Now, we've seen, of course, a lot of economic diversification efforts. In some ways, we've seen a reduction in the dependence on oil as the motor for the region's economies, but that's not necessarily uniform throughout. There still is a great dependence. Also reflecting maybe a little bit on the fact this is the 10th GRM, where do you see the changes in the international energy scene? And is energy still going to be the backbone of the GCC in 10 years' time? Where are we heading on this?
Well, Chris, the main development over the past 10 years since we started the GRM on the energy scene has actually taken place in the United States. The main fact is that United States production of oil and gas has gone from 15 million barrels of oil equivalent per day in 2009 to 25, so from 15 to 25 million barrels of oil equivalent today. And the perspective is that it might grow further to 35 over the next 5 to 10 years. This is unprecedented in the history of the industry, this kind of growth, and certainly something that no one expected and has changed the equilibria in the oil and gas industry. So it has affected prices, as we well know. Prices at the beginning of this decade were high and stayed high, notwithstanding excess production, until 2014. And thereafter, they have significantly reduced. And although to some extent they may have recovered from the low point in 2016, they remain considerably lower than they were at the beginning of the decade. This has driven home the need for more economic diversification in the region, and I think that this remains a major preoccupation. I am personally convinced that the Gulf countries have achieved significant progress in diversification, and I frequently debate against the opinion of those that say that nothing has happened. That's not true. At the same time, is this enough? And the answer is no, it's not enough. And it's not enough, especially with respect to something that, so to speak, has not happened. And what has not happened is progress in changing our energy economies in order to meet the challenge of climate change. The United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change was signed and approved in 1993. That's 25 years ago. And in 25 years, there is no visible progress at the global level. Individual countries have made some progress. But at the global level, there is no visible progress in terms of meeting the challenge of climate change. I think that's the major issue that lies ahead for the Gulf countries. How are they going to participate in the global effort that will be needed, and what will happen if not enough is done, and therefore we need to face the impact of climate change, which is pretty much under the eyes of everybody these days. And more will come, and more will come. So this is, I think, an existential challenge for the future of the Gulf economies that may reduce, may limit further their dependence on oil production, but certainly will remain to a large extent characterized by the abundance of hydrocarbon resources, and therefore the question whether there is a future for hydrocarbons at all in the new situation is one that needs to be urgently addressed. And I think, quite frankly, that not enough is being done, not anywhere in the world, and specifically not enough is being done in the Gulf region.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Dr. Sun, do you want to? Yes, please.
One sentence,
please
if you don't
come on
mind. Actually, I think His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed summarized it once. He said, I'm waiting for the day when we will celebrate exporting the last barrel of oil from the UAE. And I think that reflects on all GCC.
Yes, precisely.
So we are really aiming towards diversification. And if you look at all national plans, the 2030, 2025, the development plans they are all aiming for diversification, clean energy, and getting away from relying on oil.
Exactly. But again, you just mentioned the various diversification plans we have in the region, the vision, so-called vision documents. And this is the question I'm going to apply over to John in terms of the economic diversification plans overall. How realistic are some of the, I mean, Saudi Vision 2030, it all sounds very fantastic and where you want to go. We've seen over the past couple of years that the sort of operational guideline in terms of the National Transformation Plan has been adjusted several times to lower some expectations. Where do you see all this going? What's the main challenge, and how? I mean, are we sort of putting out bubbles out there that ultimately will burst, or what do you think?
Right. Okay. Giacomo, I think, said it all. I don't need to say much. I don't know. I mean, it's very difficult, right? For sure, let me say a few words about the country that is my country without the passport for the last 16 years, which is Saudi Arabia. I do hope one day I will get the passport. So that's the usual thing I say when I meet senior officials, that one day I will get it. And they always say, of course, of course. I think that Saudi Arabia has finally woke up to the fact that the old system was not functioning well. And despite some of the criticism that it is going too fast, most of the defining characteristics of what Saudi Arabia is undertaking today is descriptive of what is happening in the rest of the region, more or less, meaning that they're running out of time. And they could very well, the Gulf economies, change, transform, adapt, educate, include, meaning include women, do all the labor reforms, and still fail to catch up. Because in economics, there are two phases. There is the endogenous factor, what's happening outside, which goes back to Giacomo's point, and the endogenous, the inside. So the inside, I think, is trying to adjust. Bahrain has done it for many years, and it is, on the right track. But again, whatever Bahrain does, it has to do with whatever happens to the region and the world. The same goes for Saudi Arabia, the same goes for the UAE, the same goes for Kuwait, the same goes for Qatar, the Q, right? The Q country. The same goes for Oman. You could very well change inside, but then what happens to the rest of the world? And I think that's very critical as well. I think that Saudi Arabia is showing signs of trying to change, as I said. Some people say that it's very fast for the bureaucracy, for institutions. Remember, however, that when we were helping to write the 7th five-year plan, Giacomo and I and others in Saudi Arabia, the main issue was that we wrote the plan and nobody read the plan. And we were commenting that how come we're here and we're writing and nobody is reading. Well, finally now I think they read something. I think for sure they're overdoing it on the writing and the slides and the consultants. And I think there is an interesting paper that is being presented this year. And that I think requires a whole workshop about the region. But I think that there are important changes that finally are coming along. The gaps lie in things that we all know from other countries, such as institutional capacity, human capital capacity, that some countries are ahead, others are a little bit behind, if not more behind. Governance is very important. And you need to be lucky, because luck is very important. Yes, you could study at Cambridge University, but not get a real job for the rest of your lives. So it matters the timing that they do this, the catch-up of the economy, and this goes back to, the writings of economists in the 1950s. The economy needs to catch up, and you might not be able to catch up. I find quite interesting and critically the approach that the region looks at countries like South Korea to follow. I mean, they're diametrically very different countries, and South Korea cannot be replicated in many of the countries of the region, and that we can write a book, why and why not. And finally, the issue that was mentioned by Sheikh Abdallah, which is very important, the issue of states, security, stability. I'm paraphrasing Sheikh Abdallah. The issue of semi-failed states or failed states. Whenever the world looks at the Middle East, they look at today 3 semi or completely failed states and others that are going through difficulties, and that has an impact on economies. Luckily, the region has not been as much as impacted as it could be, so there is stability still, right? And whenever I hear people from the outside who look at the region, they say, oh, this is, Saudi Arabia is a very unstable place, the Gulf is unstable. Yes, potentially, but as an economist, I do see more stability there than other parts of the Middle East, and that's important as well. Of course, I don't want to get into the territory of political scientists and IR people that potentially could get very threatening. Yes, of course. But overall, I think that I would agree with what Giacomo said, that the region has accomplished a lot. The region definitely has a potential. This is not a zombie region. This is a region that has a lot of more and well-educated youngsters. And also, we're seeing signs that the region wants to change. So no doubt, the 2030 plan and all the 2030 plans that management consultants have presented and the leadership has adopted, I think they're aspirational. However, the region does need to have a certain aspiration, because for many years we were told that there is no aspiration, there is no vision, You know, I remember in Saudi Arabia, all too often I would hear, well, we don't know where the country is going. Well, I don't think it's a correct assessment. So I think that directionally they're okay, but what happens is, you know, beyond their control as well. So oil and the price of oil and the demand for oil is very important, because yet the economies have not diversified. And you would see that if oil goes to $40 or $35 a barrel, the region will feel the hit from such a decline in oil prices.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you for that. Just one small comment. I mean, from my vantage point here, and we're talking about diversification, and nothing to take away from the panel, but I think we need more gender diversification as well. Mustafa, let me turn to you a little bit on the security front and go back to the hardcore issues, really. It was spoken about already in the presentations, both of Sheikh Abdullah and Dr. Al-Zayani, about the tensions in the region. At the moment, we see again rising tensions with Iran, and to many outsiders, if they take again the 10-year view since GRM started, the security situation in the region hasn't really gotten any better. In fact, many would argue it's deteriorated quite a bit. Where do you see these developments going? Are we about to enter into another conflict with Iran? How dangerous really is it? And then maybe one question just related to, because I think Dr. Zayani also mentioned external powers and, you know, the central role being played by the United States. When we started GRM in 2010, it was the beginning of the Obama administration. Now we have the administration of Donald Trump. To what degree is the US still the reliable source of, it plays such an important role as security guarantor for many of the GCC states. Is the US still the reliable actor that the region can count on?
Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon for everybody. I want to say about our relation with the United States. There is no love. It is necessity. The US needs us, and we need the US. And there is a huge gap of mistrust with the US. In fact, the issue of Iran, we are part of it, but we are not necessarily a decision maker. Whether in the question of diplomatic settlement or the question of military confrontation. We're going to be a part of it, no doubt about it. But are we really a partner? I doubt it. So the question here is okay, we don't want a bad relation with Iran. We know the reality on the ground. We cannot deselect Iran as a neighbor. This is the fact of geography, fact of history. It is unchangeable. But the problem when you have a neighbor with ambition beyond any reasonable limitation. Iran involved in empire building, not a state. And if you look now in the map, I mean, you are not imagining Iranian threat. And you are not exaggerating Iranian threat. On the other hand, actually, we try to calm down the situation because it is our interest. But if you look at Iran, it is empire from the Mediterranean, from the shore of Lebanon to the Gulf region. You're talking about Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and now Yemen. There is no place for such a state in the region. Expansionist state, interventionist state. Saddam Hussein gone after the invasion of Kuwait, when he had the dream of building empire. And now we're facing really a country which using different means. It's not military intervention, it's intelligence intervention, building militia. Iran is the only state on earth in the history giving ballistic missiles to militia. These missiles are not owned by a state. You go to Lebanon, the Lebanese army have no ballistic missiles, but Hezbollah got ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. So you're talking about a state we are not imagining the Iranian threat is real, and the expansionist policy of Iran is a major source of instability in the region. The war in Yemen, I can't tell you. I remember what happened when the decision to go to Yemen. People think that Gulf state, whether Saudi Arabia, at that time actually all the 5 countries except Oman, agreed on operation in Yemen. For a very simple reason. It is a war of necessity, not a war of choice. We look at Iran, successful experience in Hezbollah, and basically Hezbollah started in a small street in south of Lebanon. Now Hezbollah dancing in every party in the region, whether in Syria, other part. And we don't want this experience repeated in the Gulf region or in Arabia. So the decision to go to Yemen is 100% right. It is our strategic, based on strategic calculation. The result is not as we wish. Yes, I know. Ask the American why they didn't finish Afghan war, why they didn't finish Iraq, why they didn't finish Vietnam. This is not only applicable to us. So the question here is whether we trust the United States or not. Absolutely not. I can tell you. The nuclear deal, 8 years of Obama administration, we suffer a lot. And even the deal, we have never been consulted. We are part, we're supposed to be partner in this deal, because we are the victim of any Iranian nuclear capability. We are the first 9 victims, but we never been consulted. And then we discovered that the deal based on 2 wrong principles. The first is separating the nuclear issue from other issue of Iranian behavior, from the expansionist, interventionist, missiles, sponsoring terrorism and militia. You cannot focus on this issue only and leave Iran free hand on other issues. And this is what happened during Obama. Then we forced to accept the deal. We didn't accept it officially. We just kept silent because our involvement in Yemen. And it is basically a balancing act. There is no American support if you put opposition to the deal. And happened at that time, at the same time. But we discovered even the deal is not going to work to stop the Iranians from acquiring nuclear military capability. So why you think that we can trust the American? Now even in this confrontation, we don't know what the American policy in the region. Are they really serious about containing Iran? I don't see, if I'm sitting in Washington, to be honest with you, I will never work to reduce the Iranian threat to the region. Iranian threat, give me, first forcing all these countries to buy arms, non-stop. Forcing this country to come closer to me. Forcing this country to answer any question I put, any request. So why I'm going to remove a major factor which benefiting my policy? Yes, I will prevent Iran from occupying, for example, any Gulf country. But is it in my interest to reduce the Iranian threat? I don't see it. And we can see it in the missiles, the Iranian missiles, 500 missiles, Houthi, hitting every city in Saudi Arabia. And the American is not really helping. They can sell Patriot, yes, but they are not helping to stop the flow of the missiles to the Houthi. And this is a militia. So, to answer your question, our relation with the United States based on necessity and not on trust. And again, I mean, the confrontation with Iran, it is not, the decision is not in our hand. We don't know what the American going to do. It's limited military action. It is major military action. It is diplomatic solution. The question here, if you go to a military action, and even strong economic punishment, is the regime in Iran going to survive? If the regime in Iran collapses under the pressure of military action or economic pressure, and you have a similar what happened in Sudan or Algeria or Egypt, people are rising. Are the regime going to survive? If the regime is not going to survive, what's the alternative? We're going to see Iran in the same way of instability in Libya, and this is going to affect our strategic calculation. But to say we are really a major player in controlling the relation and the conflict between Iran and the United States, I have not.
Okay, great. Sheikh Abdullah, you want to come in for a second?
Dr.
Because then I want to go to the questions after that, so please.
Dr. Abdul Latif Al-Zayani has inspired us to ask questions. So if I may ask a question, what's the future of the JCPOA? Where is it heading? Is it heading towards a brick wall? Or is it heading towards a wall of glass? Or will it continue to have a path full of roses as it did back in 2015? A lot of what has been said interconnect. Back in 2015, when the deal was signed, it was an enormous political victory for all of the signatories of the deal. And Iran was the biggest winner. Countries of the region, especially the Gulf states, were not involved and included whatsoever. And today the region is paying the price. How so? Because just part of the issue with Iran was dealt with, which was the nuclear deal, or the nuclear program. The ballistic missile program, Iran's misbehavior in the region, was disregarded totally, as if the international community was fine with Iran developing a ballistic missile program and fine with supporting and financing the militias in the region. After the United States uplifted the sanctions on Iran, we have hoped that those funds would have been invested internally to upgrade the infrastructure, to deal with the mounting inflation, to create better job opportunities for the youth of Iran. Instead, those funds were channeled to finance and support their proxies, namely Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen. And if you look at the conflicts within the Middle East, you would find that most of them have gained traction following the signing of the JCPOA. Even if you look at the number of migrants who influx into Europe, you would find that according to UN statistics, the numbers has risen following the lifting of the sanctions on Iran and the continuous funding and supporting of militias in the region. So where are we heading? I'll leave the question to you.
Okay, that's a very good question. Let me try to bring the audience in a little bit so we can have some questions here. And I'm just moving here so I can see a little bit better because it's very difficult with the lights to sort of see. Does somebody have a question that we can have to the audience? Maybe I'll take 3 or 4 questions, then we can go back. Right there, please. If you can, and there is some microphone. If you can just quickly identify yourself so that we know who you are, and then we can have the questions.
Thank you, Christian. My name is Hassan Hassan. I'm a PhD student at King's College London. I'd like to jump on your last point, Sheikh Abdullah, regarding the JCPOA. I agree that the Gulf states were indeed excluded from the JCPOA, even though they are physically and geopolitically on the front lines. I wrote a small op-ed once that I thought that the exclusion of the GCC states and the complete inconsideration of their priorities was one of the, I think, weaknesses of the agreement. My question to yourself, to His Excellency Abdul Latif Al-Zayani, what are the GCC states doing to ensure that the next time there is an agreement, they are at least represented on the table, either directly or in terms of their interests being taken into account? What are we doing to make our voices heard as GCC states in the next nuclear agreement, assuming, and as I tend to do, that there is going to be one? Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Do we have another question? Right here in the front, please.
My question is to Sheikh Abdullah regarding the Middle East workshop. How many Gulf countries attended, at what level, what is the impact of their attendance, and what are the next steps?
Okay, question specifically on the meeting. I'll have one here in the front as well.
Good evening, everybody. Dr. Omar Al-Khattabi from Jordan. I think we are a party in the crisis which is in Middle East. All what you talk about the relation between Gulf and Iran, we must be a party because we have all the power to be a party, not to be who is the game for America or Iran. Thank you.
Okay, party to the region. And I've got one way at the back, last row, gentleman who has his hand up. I'll take that one, and then.
Good afternoon. Naji Marabi, Lausanne University. My question is about the vision adopted by the local government in GCC, 2030-2025. To which extent those vision can it play a role in the interdependence and the integrity for the state and the region?
Great. Then we have a question on the vision plans. So diversification issues, integration, how much does it play a role in terms of integration? A question on the Bahrain meeting, and I think a couple of questions also posed to Dr. Al-Zayani, future of JCPOA, plus implementation of agreements, and where does one go forward? Dr. Al-Zayani, can I maybe ask?
Sure.
Turn to you first.
Okay. I think, Hassan, your question is a good question, and it has always been on the minds of all ministers of foreign affairs. In their statements, they have indicated that we are really peace-loving nations. We don't seek war. We consider that the JCPOA is one of the issues that need to be resolved. The gentleman did talk about the other issues, the Scuds, the ballistic missiles, the continued interference in the internal affairs of the other countries, the insistence on exporting revolution, not really respecting the main principles of the United Nations Charter. Just if you go to the first couple of pages of the United Nations Charter, it will spell out the main principles which the Iran doesn't really respect and adhere to. Also, the continued disdaining of and not respecting the Security Council resolutions. We have been calling for to ensure, and we think that any other attempt in renewing or updating or amending the JCPOA will take in consideration the concerns that the GCC member states and any other neighboring countries have. I think the main thing is we as nations in this part of the world, we like to live side by side, and despite of differences in ideologies and sect and religion, we had enough. The Middle East has seen enough wars. We hope that the international community realize that for their interest, that the whole issue of the violence, the challenges in the Middle East will be looked at comprehensively. I think one of the let's say, not a mistake, but the tendency to look at challenges in isolation from each other, independent of each other. While I think we have to look at the overarching vision, the overarching goal, and how do these challenges do interact, and that also applies to Iran. It's not only the JCPOA, but also the other issues has to be looked at together. But also, Iran is not the only challenge that we have in this part of the world to achieve peace and security in the region, even though it's essential that we look at it. I tried to point it out in my remarks that if the Palestinian issue is the root of the problems, then Iran is benefiting from those issues, and as a result, we're getting the radicalization and terrorism, etc. So I think our preach is being heard, is being talked about in all occasions by the ministers of foreign affairs.
Okay, thank you. Sheikh Abdullah, you had a question posed to you also on the Palestinian meeting in Bahrain. So,
Dr. Hassan, I did not recognize you with no hair. Iran has been working and acting on a clear road path for the past 4 decades. A path of aggression, destruction, and targeted terrorism. There is a long list that is very well known to everybody. Yes, the Gulf states were not involved in 2015 during the discussions, negotiations, and the signing of the JCPOA. With the new administration of the United States, we have seen the unilateral withdrawal of the deal and the list with the 12 conditions, which reflect precisely the concerns we have in the Gulf. I can speak for Bahrain only. Moving forward, should there be another deal, if there would be another deal, it's good to have a deal pertaining to the nuclear program, even though it has several loopholes, but having a deal is better than no deal. Yes, but until when will the international community disregard the other 2 main aspects of Iran's regional misbehavior? I think this should be addressed, and we have seen how the current US administration, and primarily through the special envoy of the State Department, Brian Hook, how strict measures are being taken by the administration against Iran. And finally, a decision has been taken to designate the IRGC as a terrorist organization. Everybody in this hall knows that it's all about the IRGC. It has been the IRGC all the way. It is the external destructive arm of Iran to export the so-called revolution. But again, back in 2017, Iran was bragging about occupying 4 Arabian capitals. Today, they are struggling internally. It's a regret to say that whatever developments are happening, the Iranian people are suffering first and foremost. The Iranian people are decent people, they're hardworking people, they're life-loving people. In Bahrain, we have lots of Bahraini from Persian origins who we studied with, we play with, and we live with. But the policies of the theocratic regime in Iran is harming the prosperity and the development in the region, but also it's hindering the development of Iran domestically. So we hope that should there be any agreements or any future deals that the Gulf Cooperation Council member states will be involved in, I'm sure the GCC Secretary General is doing his level best on that end. With regards to the workshop of Bahrain, there was representations from the Gulf states on different levels. Some sent designated ministers, and some sent ambassadors and certain officials. There are a number of representatives from the private sector who participated, who spoke in a number of sessions. Next steps, I don't know. Nothing concrete came out, but we have heard that Mr. Kushner has announced that in a few months' time, the United Nations, the United States would announce the political plan, which is yet to be unveiled later this year, so you should stay tuned.
Okay, John, question on vision plans and interdependence. Do they create more interdependence? Is there more opportunities for cooperation, or are they also competing with one another? Where do you see that going in the region?
Sorry, I only got the vision plans.
You can rephrase what I said.
Yeah, I'll just rephrase. I agree.
Vision plans and interdependence, does it create greater interdependence in the region that we have different vision plans from different countries? Does it create complementarity, or is there also a level of competition?
Does it create competition?
Yes.
Ah, okay, great question. That you need to write a book on this. Well, there are two versions to this. One is the management consultant version, which is I work for XYZ firm, and I give the same, more or less, blueprint I gave to country X in the region to another country, and I just change the coloring from green to green. That's, I think, one issue. The other issue is one of capacity, and I think it has very little to do with the vision or the visions itself. I think if you look at planning and how economic development took place in the golden age of the Gulf countries, the latest one, which is from 2004 to 2014-15, before the drop in oil prices, is that we did exhibit as a region excessive duplication. Everybody in the region wanted to have the largest and best airline in the world. It wasn't enough to build a regional airline, but everybody started developing and exhibiting signs of what I call the syndrome, mine is bigger. And that didn't help the region, because you cannot have 4 global airlines all based in the GCC. It just doesn't happen. The ones who benefit are the manufacturers of plane and the ones who do the financing for the planes, which in our region is predominantly the French. So that hasn't helped. On industry, we have seen a similar pattern where everybody in the region in 2007 to 2010 wanted to become the industrial aluminum smelter hub of the world. And the UAE had similar plans. Saudi Arabia at some point in one particular area, which is King Abdullah Economic City, wanted to have 6 smelters and so forth. I'm sorry to say that unfortunately there is one pioneer and leader in this, which is Aluminium Bahrain, Alba, which does a very good job despite the subsidies and all that. But it is the leader, and the others are trying to limp along, as we say. So the region did exhibit a lot of duplication, which came as a result of excessive capital, but also the advice that was received from management consultants. Whoever is writing this paper is going to have a lot of footnotes at the end. And I think that the region did the same thing in terms of the services sector and also in terms of tourism. At some point, we heard that not only the success of Dubai was to be replicated in Abu Dhabi, but other countries in the region wanted to do the same thing, and more recently Saudi Arabia, which does display a lot of comparative advantage, but at the same time there are limits to what you can do and how many people you can attract. And when I hear numbers that, for instance, in the case of Saudi Arabia, they will attract 35 million tourists, and my home country, which is Greece, is attracting 15, one needs to question the numbers. You know, why would they go to Saudi and not Greece or Italy or Egypt for that matter, or Turkey, since they have managed very well the currency over the last year and it has dropped by 50%. I think that has been amazing news for the tourism industry, although if you're a businessman you cannot do much and remorse that your money has, your value has gone down. So I think that back to Vision 2030, you know, my advice to the policymakers is you know your country better than the advice you're getting from these highly paid young people, predominantly young people from the region as well. I'm not going to go ethnic, but you know who they are and where they come from. If you're on a flight from Beirut on a Saturday evening, they all flock the same planes. And if you are on the same airline, on the same destination from Dubai, a similar thing is happening on a Saturday evening flight or a Wednesday evening flight going out of Riyadh back to where they're coming from. So you know your country better than whoever is advising you. And I think that economics is both a science, if you're into econometrics, as well as an art. And you need to apply common sense, more so than anything else, because they are doing a lot of disservice to our region. And I use the we because I include myself. Greece is the only member, I say this, of the Arab League who has made it to the EU. So I'm not very popular with this view in Greece, but I'm not running for a politician anytime soon in Greece. So I think that you need to go back, we need to go back and think what is that makes our region go forward and go with it. You know, the slides can be produced by outsiders, but the forward thinking has to be done by us, the locals.
Thank you, John. I think that's an excellent message to close on. I'm really sorry. I know we could have probably accommodated a lot more questions. 2 hours always go by much quicker than one thinks, but hopefully you will be able to raise many of this discussion and continue it on into your workshops. I hope you found this discussion a little bit interesting. Hopefully, if it's successful, it raised more questions than answers in the end of the day. But please also join me in thanking our panel with them really frank and open words, and I really enjoyed it. And Oscar, back to you.
Thank you. Before we leave, there is one more person who would like to say a few words, and that person is Dr. Ahmed Zagat. He's a board member of the GRC Foundation as well as GRC Cambridge.
Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First, this wasn't meant to be in your schedule, otherwise would have been punished by the chairman of the GRC. We felt that the GRC staff wants to acknowledge what Abdulaziz did to GRM and what he did to make this happening for the past 10 years, because without him, without his real support and the motivation on him, it would have never continued for 10 years. So can we ask the hero of GRM to come at stage? There is a little gift from the GRC staff. We would like to present it to him. He wasn't aware, so I hope.
It is a beautiful surprise. I did not expect it, but thank you very much. Thank you for all my colleagues at the GRC. Now we're going to move out of this room. We will go for a group photo and dinner. It's going to be a little nice walk, so it's just a few minutes, for those whom they know. It's in front of the King's College, main dining room there. Thank you very much again, and let's, thank you.